feel so rested. Usually when the alarm wakes me up for work, I feel completely... Alarm! Crap! Why are you unplugged? Because you need that socket to charge your card skimmer, Emmy. Because you forgot to charge your battery packs the day before, Emmy. I know I'm gonna be late and get fired in that order. Hacking a company like Kotek is certifiably insane, but it's for a lot of money. But I'm gonna get caught and thrown in jail, but it's a lot of money. I need to go. Do I have everything? Doesn't matter. I need to go before I miss my... Thank you, Magnatrain, for being slightly late today and for being my only 15 minutes of peace each morning and evening. Sorry, coming through very late. I can't believe I made it on time. With 1 minute to spare. Wait, am I wearing socks?
Sometimes it's the simple things. I was curious about Yars Rising when I saw the trailer for it during one of Jeff Keighley's Jeff Things. So when I saw it during the the Steam Summer Sale, same thing if you really consider the timing, I figured I'd pick it up and give it a whirl. There's a lot to have fun with and enjoy, but if you're someone who's looking for a more hardcore or difficult or involved Metroidvania, then you might want to look elsewhere. But enough preamble, let's start with the general premise. In Yars Rising, you play as Emmy, a corporate hacker turned reluctant savior of the world, as the company she worked for, Kotek, turns out not to be the regular level of heartless that you'd expect from a major corporation. Oh, also aliens and alien things. So Emmy, along with her friends, but really just Emmy if I'm being real, are tasked with stopping Kotek and saving the world from a terrible fate. The story overall is okay, but I really came to enjoy the cast of characters in the game. Emmy was someone I was a little concerned with at first because she tends to talk or just yap a lot and joke a lot, which I normally don't have a problem with. Like, I like those kinds of characters, but there's a way you could do it right and there's a way that you could do it wrong that comes off as annoying. And obviously, right and wrong in this regard is subjective. You might not think that Emmy, or even someone like, say, Deadpool or Spider-Man, are all that great of characters because all they do is talk and yap a lot and joke a lot. You might not like those kinds of characters, and that's okay. But on the other hand, you might love those kinds of characters and they are the pinnacle of writing for you. This is all just opinion. Heck, I tend to do the same kind of thing in real life, so I get it. But I also know when to shut my mouth, believe it or not. So I was worried that Emmy will fall into the same pitfalls as Shipset did in Akimbot or Claptrap from Borderlands, or just be an overall, I yap and yap and yap and yap. Oh, we're actually trying to have a serious moment here. Well, I'm going to keep yapping. Thankfully, she never gets there. Emmy is generally pretty funny, or at least would make me smile with her quirky sense of humor. Said humor that often feels like she's just coping to get by, kind of like how Spider-Man does a lot of the time. You think he's just cracking jokes to crack jokes most of the time, and no, in reality, he does that maybe like 20% of the time. The other 80 is him joking so he doesn't have a panic attack. I think Emmy kind of falls into that same kind of category. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have moments here and there where I'm like, okay, that joke wasn't really necessary right there. But at that point, that's me being picky. I'm going on so long about Emmy and how often she talks and stuff like that because I noticed it became kind of a trend with some of the games I play here on the channel, or games I've played in general, or even movies I've seen, where you have a character that used to back in the day, maybe 5 years ago, maybe a decade ago, where I couldn't get enough of the yapping, I couldn't get enough of the quips, I couldn't get enough of all that. And now, while I still like those as one of my favorite character archetypes, I've just seen so many examples of that going wrong, where those characters will come across as annoying for the wrong reasons. So it's just nice to see them done right, and Emmy is done right, ultimately. Anyway, the rest of her friends, for the most part, are just okay, with only one of them having more of a spotlight than the other two for reasons that are kind of spoilery, and I'm not going to go into that. But before I continue, I will shout out one of her friends, though, in that just okay group, Cayenne. Cayenne is genuinely really funny as well. Like, the quips between him and Emmy, those had me laughing. Like they play off really well off of each other. other cast members are decent enough for the role that they have in the story, but they don't do much more than that. So really, the story just centers around the main antagonist and Emmy. That's not a major criticism on my part though, since the game very clearly overall isn't trying to take itself super seriously all the time. Though there are times when you'll get blindsided by a line and think, haha, that's not funny. Damn, Emmy, are you okay? Do you need a hug? Beyond the story and characters is of course a whole video game, so let's talk about that. Yars Rising, which is apparently part of a whole doggone franchise I had no clue existed, is a Metroidvania at its core. So think stuff like Hollow Knight, Metroid Dread, and etc. Only in Yars Rising's case, it veers more on the simple side of the Metroidvania skew, or spectrum I should say, compared to like something like Hollow Knight, which I'd argue is more complicated and more difficult. And before you take it that way, no, I don't mean that as an insult. In my opinion, difficulty doesn't necessarily equate to a better game if one in its same genre is simpler. It just means one's simpler and the other one's more complicated. Whether or not they're good, it depends on how they stand on their own merits. For example, as a huge fan of survival horror games, I've come to appreciate the most unforgiving and difficult survival horror games, as well as the very simple and straightforward ones, like say, Crow Country. I have played much less forgiving survival horror games, but I still loved Crow Country. Both unforgiving and forgiving styles of survival horror can exist in the same genre and be good. But once again, much like I was talking about with characters earlier, that is also subjective. What I look for in survival horror games is going to be different for what you look for in survival horror games. What I look for in Metroidvanias is going to be different from what you look for in Metroidvanias. So if you're more of a hardcore Metroidvania fan looking for the next high, I get it. Like I said, no judgment here. You probably won't vibe with Yars Rising as much as you would others. But I actually think that's partially because the focus of Yars Rising is elsewhere. The core gameplay loop of Yars Rising is finding an area, figuring out how to navigate it, hacking a terminal to play a small minigame, I'll talk more about those in a moment, repeating those 3 steps with some story sprinkled in there in between in some places, and possibly finding new powers, then fighting a boss with a major story beat. So overall, the standard for a Metroidvania, at least with some give and take. Combat is not all that difficult, but the upgrades you get over time will make it more interesting as you go. Boss fights are varied in how you approach them, but they aren't difficult to get a handle on. There is a difficulty you unlock after completing the game called Professional Mode, but you'd still need to beat the game for the first time before you can play it. I didn't go through the game a second time on Professional Mode, so I'm unsure of how much it changes things. But honestly, most of your challenge in the first playthrough is going to come from the hacking minigames. The hacking minigames are represented by little arcade games you get to play, which have their own variety of objectives to complete. Sometimes it's simply get enough energy to fire a cannon and destroy a target. By the way, the cannon, the energy cannon that you have, it appears behind you, so you'll have to get out of the way when you fire it. Other times you'll have to dodge incoming fire while whittling away at a shield, while also dodging the target's tracking attacks. It can get pretty crazy. The most difficult ones to me are the ones that give Emmy a new power-up and the ones that give her a new biohack upgrade. Biohack upgrades are basically just new passives and bonuses for combat, hacking, and exploration. Very handy. Overall, the minigames are a lot of fun and are where I would argue the game has a lot of its attention, while all the actual Metroidvania stuff is secondary. Doesn't mean there isn't a lot of effort put into Metroidvania stuff, it's just that the challenge that I found to be in the game were the hacking portions. Everything else was pretty by the numbers. As for the powers that Emmy gets, they're more in line with what you'd expect from a Metroidvania. Some abilities help with navigation, others help with combat. I do also like how Emmy comments on how useful and on how weird some of the abilities she gets are.
Emmy, you good? Your biometrics are unusual.
Mal! I totally missed you. Did you miss me?
I assume you broke out of that detention center?
Oh, yeah, totally. But guess what else? I found this huge rainbow-colored console that rewrote my DNA, I guess. And now my hands shoot energy waves.
Whoa. Energy Hand sounds sick! This is Refresh, by the way.
I destroyed one of those expensive-looking Kotek robots.
They must love you over there.
Actually, they're pretty annoyed with, oh, you were being sarcastic.
Huh. Sounds like some kind of physiological augment. Wasn't sure they actually existed outside of deep web forums and black market body mods.
I thought about getting a body mod once. For real!
Outside of gameplay and story, and on my way to ending this review, the game has a cool and sleek anime kind of retro future, but not really visual style that I really like. I almost said visual novel just because I said visual and I was going to lead into novel. This is not a visual novel. Although some of the cutscenes are presented in a very... Well, no, I guess some of the cutscenes are presented in a bit of a visual novel way. But anyway, the environments are very nicely detailed and sometimes have a lot going on when it comes to some of the environmental hazards that you'll come across. This is all complemented by the game's addicting soundtrack. For real. They're going crazy on the synth. All in all, Yars Rising is a simple but effective Metroidvania that I think deserves to be picked up, so I'll give it a go for it. But I'm going to put asterisks on that. What I'm about to talk about now has nothing to do with the quality of the game in my opinion, but more to do with whether or not you think the game is worth the price that's at up front when there's no sale. I saw a discussion or two on Reddit and the game Steam discussion page, so I thought I should bring this up. Long story short, Yars Rising is $30 on Steam. I'm not sure how it's priced elsewhere, but that's what it is on Steam. When I picked up the game, as I stated earlier, I got it during a Steam sale. I'm certain that it was one of the games that was on sale because I don't remember dropping $30 on it, but I also don't remember it being like 50% off. So therein lies the debate. Is Yars Rising worth $30 when you could pick up something like Hollow Knight for $15 and get a much deeper, more difficult experience out of that? If I'm being blunt and using that logic, no. But the reason I can understand the logic but not fully agree with that logic is because I think that's completely dependent on what you're looking for, as I mentioned earlier, out of a Metroidvania. But not just a Metroidvania, out of a game. This is why I brought up that this game probably wouldn't be worth the time for people who are looking for a more hardcore experience out of their Metroidvania games, since they likely wouldn't think a game as simple as Yars Rising would be worth their time, let alone $30. But hey, I also realize I'm generalizing, since I'm sure some of you would be like, I'm a hardcore Metroidvania fan, but for me, this also sounds like a good time, and I don't really care about the price. $30 is fine with this. Just be good at the end of the day. Price tags in video games honestly warrants a whole video by itself because it's a very nuanced and difficult topic to talk about, so I don't want to bloat this video any more than I already am, just regurgitating something I've talked about in like maybe every blue moon, every 7 games I reviewed, I would go into this kind of topic when there's a drastic difference between how much a game costs and how long it takes to complete it. It's way too nuanced, probably warrants a different conversation, a different video. So, if everything I said sounds fine to you and you want to pick up the game, regardless of if it's full priced or half off, go for it. If you're on the fence, I'd say get it on a sale. It's your wallet. I'm just a guy on the internet sharing an opinion. Yars Rising is available on PS5, Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and Xbox One. And with all of that said, I'm gonna hop out of here myself. So I hope you all have enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl, and I'll catch you guys later.